Listen carefully. Your kindness is not the problem. Your compassion is not the problem. Your generous heart is not the problem. The problem begins when you give kindness without wisdom, forgiveness without accountability, and access without boundaries. Some people receive your kindness and become grateful. They become more respectful. They recognize your value and respond with care. But others receive your kindness and begin to believe they are entitled to it. They do not see your patience as strength. They see it as an opportunity. They do not interpret your forgiveness as grace. They interpret it as proof that there will never be consequences. And before long, you are no longer being kind. You are being trained to abandon yourself. Today, that training ends. You are going to learn that you can be compassionate without being controlled. You can forgive without returning to the same destructive cycle. You can care about someone without sacrificing your identity to keep them comfortable. You do not need to become cold. You need to become clear. You do not need revenge. You need boundaries. You do not need to destroy another person. You need to stop allowing their behavior to destroy your peace. Kindness without boundaries can slowly become permission. That is one of the hardest truths for compassionate people to accept. You may believe that by being patient, forgiving, and understanding, you are helping someone become better. You may believe that your gentleness will inspire gratitude, maturity, or change. But when a person repeatedly displays narcissistic behavior, your unlimited kindness may not be interpreted as love. It may be interpreted as access without consequences. Kindness is not weakness. Kindness is strength under control. It takes strength to remain respectful when someone is difficult. It takes maturity to listen before reacting. It takes character to forgive. But kindness loses its healthy purpose when it requires you to ignore your own dignity. There is a difference between being kind and being available for mistreatment. Being kind means you choose not to become cruel. It does not mean you must remain silent when someone disrespects you. Being kind means you communicate with honesty and compassion. It does not mean you must accept lies, insults, blame, manipulation, or emotional pressure. Being kind means you recognize the humanity of another person. It does not mean you stop recognizing your own. Many good-hearted people have been taught that saying no is selfish. They have been taught that creating distance is unloving. They have been taught that forgiveness means allowing the same person to return and repeat the same behavior. Because of this, they continue giving chances without requiring change. But a chance without accountability is not always an opportunity for growth. Sometimes it becomes permission to continue. When harmful behavior produces no meaningful consequence, the person may learn that your limits are not real. They may apologize, make promises, behave differently for a short time, and then return to the same pattern. Why? Because experience has taught them that eventually you will forgive, forget, and reopen the door. You must understand that boundaries teach people how to interact with you. A boundary says, I will not continue this conversation while I am being insulted. A boundary says, I am willing to listen, but I will not accept blame for something I did not do. A boundary says, I care about you, but I will not sacrifice my emotional health to protect you from accountability. A boundary is not revenge. It is not punishment. It is not an attempt to control another person. It is a decision about what you will participate in. You cannot control whether someone becomes angry when you say no. You cannot control whether they criticize your standards. You cannot control whether they accuse you of changing. But you can control whether their reaction forces you to abandon your decision. This is where many compassionate people struggle. They create a boundary, but the moment the other person becomes upset, they remove it. They explain too much. They apologize for having needs. They negotiate against themselves. They become afraid that protecting their peace will make them look uncaring. But a boundary that disappears under pressure is only a suggestion. You must learn to remain calm when someone dislikes your limit. Their discomfort does not automatically mean you are wrong. Their anger does not prove you are cruel. Sometimes people become upset because they were benefiting from your lack of boundaries. You do not need to become cold. You need to become consistent. Consistency is what gives a boundary power. If you say you will leave the conversation when disrespect begins, then leave when disrespect begins. If you say you will no longer lend money, do not allow guilt to reverse your decision. If you say you need space, do not let pressure force you back into the same unhealthy pattern. Your words must be supported by your actions. When your actions contradict your standards, People learn not to take your boundaries seriously. But when your actions match your words, you communicate something important. Your dignity is not negotiable. This does not mean you will never compromise. Healthy relationships require flexibility. Mature people listen, adjust, and consider one another. But compromise is different from surrender. Compromise means both people make an effort. Surrender means one person repeatedly gives up their needs to avoid conflict. Do not confuse peace with the absence of confrontation. Sometimes you avoid conflict while carrying pain inside. You remain quiet, but you are not peaceful. You smile, but resentment is growing. You agree, but your spirit is exhausted. Real peace is built on truth. Real peace allows you to speak honestly. Real peace does not require you to betray yourself. You can be compassionate and still say no. You can forgive and still create distance. You can understand someone's past and still refuse to let their pain become an excuse for harming you. Their wounds may explain their behavior, but those wounds do not give them ownership of your life. You are responsible for your choices. They are responsible for theirs. Your kindness should encourage respect, not replace accountability. It should support growth, not protect someone from every consequence. It should flow from strength, not fear. So stop asking whether setting a boundary will upset them. Ask whether living without boundaries is destroying you. Stop asking whether they will approve of your decision. Ask whether your decision protects your values, your peace, and your future. You do not have to stop being kind. You must stop using kindness as a reason to abandon yourself. Let your heart remain soft, but let your standards become strong. Let your words remain respectful, but let your decisions become firm. Let your compassion remain alive, but never again allow compassion to become permission for repeated disrespect. Repeatedly rescuing someone from the consequences of their own behavior may look like love, but it often prevents growth. Every human being develops maturity by facing the results of their decisions. When a person lies, manipulates, disrespects, overspends, breaks promises, or creates conflict, consequences are meant to teach them that choices have weight. But when you constantly step in to repair the damage, explain their behavior, pay their debts, defend their actions, or absorb the emotional cost, you remove the very lesson that could have helped them change. You may believe you are protecting the relationship. You may tell yourself, I am just trying to keep the peace. But peace built on one person carrying all the responsibility is not real peace. It is imbalance. When you repeatedly rescue someone with strong narcissistic tendencies, they may begin to expect rescue as a normal part of the relationship. Instead of asking, what did I do wrong? They ask, who will fix this for me? Instead of learning responsibility, they learn dependence. Instead of changing their behavior, they become more skilled at creating excuses. This creates a dangerous cycle. They make a harmful choice. You experience the consequences. You confront them. They become defensive, angry, emotional, or apologetic. You feel guilty for upsetting them. Then you step in and repair the situation. The crisis ends temporarily, but the pattern remains. Why would a person change a behavior that continues to produce benefits for them? Why would they become accountable if someone else always accepts the cost? Accountability begins when people understand that their choices belong to them. You are not responsible for protecting an adult from every uncomfortable result of their wealth. You are not responsible for preserving their reputation when they repeatedly damage it. You are not required to lie for them, cover for them, or explain away actions that they refuse to acknowledge. There is a difference between support and rescue. Support says, I believe you can face this and make a better decision. Rescue says, I will face this for you because I do not believe you can handle it. Support encourages responsibility. Rescue removes responsibility. Support may offer guidance. Rescue takes control of the entire problem. When you rescue repeatedly, you may unintentionally send the message that the other person is incapable of managing their own life. This can create resentment in you and entitlement in them. You become exhausted because you are carrying two lives, while they become frustrated whenever you stop doing what they have learned to expect. You must understand that allowing consequences is not cruelty. Sometimes consequences are the clearest teachers available. If someone speaks disrespectfully and you end the conversation, that is a consequence. If someone repeatedly breaks agreements and you stop depending on their promises, that is a consequence. If someone misuses your money and you stop giving them financial access, that is a consequence. If someone violates your boundaries and you reduce their access to your life, that is a consequence. These actions are not revenge. Revenge is motivated by the desire to hurt. Boundaries are motivated by the desire to protect, clarify, and restore responsibility. You do not need to shout. You do not need to humiliate anyone. You do not need to prove that you are right. You simply need to stop participating in the pattern. This may feel difficult because rescuing can become part of your identity. You may have learned to feel valuable by being needed. You may believe that love means solving every problem. You may fear that if you stop rescuing, the other person will accuse you of being selfish, uncaring, or disloyal. But being needed is not the same as being loved. Sometimes people do not value you, they value what you keep doing for them. The truth becomes visible when you stop overfunctioning. A healthy person may feel disappointed, but they will eventually understand your limits. A manipulative person may become angry because your boundary interrupts their access to your money, time, or emotional labor. Do not let their reaction convince you that your decision is wrong. When a person has become comfortable avoiding responsibility, even a reasonable limit can feel like rejection. But their discomfort does not automatically mean you are being unkind. You can care and still say no. You can love and still refuse to cover the consequences. You can offer advice without taking over. You can encourage someone without becoming responsible for their outcome. True support strengthens people. It does not train them to remain helpless. Ask yourself honest questions. Am I helping this person grow, or am I helping them avoid growth? Am I supporting a temporary struggle, or am I financing a permanent pattern? Am I solving a problem they are actively working to change, or am I repeatedly cleaning up damage they continue to create? Your answers will reveal whether your kindness is producing progress or enabling repetition. The goal is not to abandon people whenever they make a mistake. Everyone needs patience. Everyone needs grace. Everyone needs support during difficult seasons. But grace should create room for responsibility, not erase responsibility completely. A sincere person learns. A responsible person repairs. A mature person accepts consequences. If those qualities never appear, then your rescue may be protecting the problem instead of protecting the person. Step back. Allow adults to carry what belongs to them. Stop volunteering for burdens created by decisions you did not make. You are not helping someone by making irresponsibility comfortable. Sometimes the most loving decision is to stop rescuing. Stand firmly in your boundaries, and let reality teach what your repeated explanations could not. Empathy is a beautiful human strength, but empathy becomes dangerous when it disconnects you from wisdom. You can understand why a person behaves badly without pretending that the behavior is acceptable. You can recognize that someone has been wounded without volunteering to become the next person they wound. You can acknowledge their struggles without allowing those struggles to rule your life. Too many compassionate people confuse understanding with obligation. They believe that because they can see the pain behind someone's behavior, they must continue tolerating the behavior. They say maybe they act this way because of what happened to them. That may be true, but explanation is not the same as justification. A difficult past can explain a harmful pattern, but it does not give anyone permanent permission to disrespect, manipulate, blame, control, or emotionally exhaust others. Pain deserves compassion, but behavior still requires responsibility. You must learn to hold two truths at the same time. A person may be deeply wounded, and their treatment of you may still be unacceptable. They may have experienced rejection, and they may still be responsible for how they respond to disagreement. They may struggle with insecurity, and they may still be accountable for the damage caused by their need for control. Maturity does not force you to choose between compassion and truth. Maturity teaches you to carry both. Empathy says, I understand that you are hurting. Wisdom says, your pain does not give you the right to hurt me. Empathy says, I can see why this situation is difficult for you. Discernment says, I will not abandon my values to make this easier for you. Empathy says, I hope you heal. Self-respect says, I will not sacrifice my well-being while waiting for you to choose healing. Never allow your ability to understand another person to silence your ability to judge. A mind that says judgment does not always mean condemnation. Healthy judgment is the ability to evaluate behavior, recognize patterns, and make responsible decisions. You use judgment when you decide whom to trust. You use judgment when you determine whether an apology is sincere. You use judgment when you notice that promises are repeatedly made but rarely kept. Without judgment, empathy becomes blind. Blind empathy will cause you to explain away every warning sign. It will make you excuse what should be confronted and tolerate what should be limited. It will convince you that leaving a destructive situation is cruel, while staying and losing yourself is somehow noble. That is not compassion. That is confusion. You are not required to prove your kindness by enduring endless harm. You do not have to remain available to someone simply because you understand their history. You are not their therapist, emotional punching bag, rescue system, or unlimited source of reassurance. You are a human being with your own needs, purpose, limits, and responsibilities. Some people will use your empathy to avoid accountability. Whenever you confront their behavior, they may redirect the conversation toward their suffering. They may remind you of everything they have experienced. They may accuse you of being insensitive because you finally expressed a need. Their pain becomes the center of every conversation, while the pain they caused you is ignored. Do not be manipulated by selective vulnerability. A person can be hurting and still be manipulative. A person can cry and still refuse responsibility. A person can tell a painful story and still repeat harmful behavior. Emotion does not automatically equal honesty. Vulnerability does not automatically equal change. Watch what happens after the emotional moment passes. Do they reflect? Do they apologize without blaming you? Do they respect the boundary you communicated? Do their actions improve consistently? Or do they return to the same behavior once they feel secure that you will stay? Transformation is not measured by the intensity of a conversation. It is measured by consistent conduct over time. Your empathy should help you remain humane, not helpless. It should prevent you from becoming bitter, but it should not prevent you from becoming firm. It should help you speak respectfully, but it should not force you to remain silent. It should help you avoid revenge, but it should never stop you from protecting your peace. You can care about a person and limit their access to you. You can forgive them and still refuse reconciliation. You can pray for their growth and continue your life at a safe distance. You can wish them well without returning to the environment that repeatedly broke you. Distance does not always mean hatred. Sometimes distance is the most honest form of wisdom. Remember, compassion is not measured by how much pain you can absorb. Your goodness is not proven by how long you remain in confusion. Your heart does not become more valuable because someone continually takes advantage of it. The goal is not to become cold. The goal is to become clear. Let your empathy soften the way you speak, but let wisdom guide the decisions you make. Understand people, but observe their patterns. Hear their story, but do not ignore your own experience. Respect their humanity, but never surrender your dignity. You can have compassion for their wounds without becoming a casualty of them. People who repeatedly display narcissistic behavior often test limits before they openly violate them. They may not begin with obvious disrespect. Instead, they may start with small requests, subtle guilt, dismissive comments, emotional pressure, or minor invasions of privacy. They observe how you respond. When you remain silent, laugh it off, excuse the behavior, or quickly forgive without addressing it, they may assume that your limits are flexible. What begins as a small test can slowly become a larger pattern. This is why boundaries must be clear before the situation becomes emotionally overwhelming. A boundary is not an attempt to control another person. It is a decision about what you will accept, how you will respond, and what action you will take when a line is crossed. You cannot force someone to speak respectfully, but you can end a conversation when disrespect begins. You cannot force someone to tell the truth, but you can stop giving trust where dishonesty is repeatedly demonstrated. You cannot force someone to value your time, but you can stop rearranging your entire life to accommodate their demands. Many kind people struggle with boundaries because they fear appearing rude, selfish, difficult, or unloving. They may believe that saying no will create conflict, but avoiding a necessary boundary does not remove conflict. It usually delays it. The difference is that delayed conflict often becomes more painful because resentment, confusion, and emotional exhaustion have been allowed to grow. A healthy boundary can be calm and simple. It does not require shouting, threats, insults, or long explanations. You may say, "I am willing to discuss this, but I will not continue while I am being insulted." You may say, "I am not available for that." You may say, I have already explained my decision. You may say, if this behavior continues, I will leave the conversation. The power of a boundary is not in how dramatic it sounds. Its power is in whether you consistently follow through. Consistency is especially important because inconsistent boundaries teach people that persistence can defeat your decision. If you say no but later give in, after guilt, anger, flattery, or pressure, the other person learns that your first answer is not final. They may continue pushing until they receive the response they want. This does not mean you can never reconsider a decision. It means that your decisions should change because of thoughtful reflection, not because someone emotionally cornered you. You must also understand that people who benefited from your lack of boundaries may react strongly when you begin establishing them. They may accuse you of changing. They may call you cold. They may say you are selfish, ungrateful, or overly sensitive. They may remind you of favors they performed in the past. They may act as though your limit is an attack against them. Do not immediately assume that their discomfort means your boundary is wrong. Ask yourself a better question. Is this boundary respectful, reasonable, and necessary for my well-being? If the answer is yes, remain steady. Another person's emotional reaction does not automatically determine whether your decision is healthy. Boundaries also reveal the quality of a relationship. Emotionally mature people may not always like your limits, but they can eventually respect them. They can listen, negotiate, reflect, and adjust. A person who repeatedly punishes you for having needs is showing you that they value access to you more than they value your well-being. Pay attention to that difference. You are not required to explain every boundary until the other person agrees with it. Agreement is not necessary for a boundary to be valid. Your responsibility is to communicate clearly and act consistently. Their responsibility is to decide how they will respond. Do not confuse peace with the absence of disagreement. Sometimes peace begins with an uncomfortable conversation. Sometimes peace begins when you stop pretending that harmful behavior is acceptable. Sometimes peace begins when you finally say what you should have said long ago. Your limits are not evidence that you lack compassion. They are evidence that your compassion now includes you. You matter too. Your energy matters. Your time matters. Your emotional stability matters. Your future matters. The goal is not to become hard, suspicious, or cruel. The goal is to become discerning. You can remain kind while refusing manipulation. You can remain respectful while ending disrespectful conversations. You can remain compassionate while reducing access to someone who repeatedly harms you. A strong boundary does not say, you must become who I want you to be. It says, I know who I must become, and I will no longer participate in what destroys my peace, dignity, or purpose. That is not selfishness. That is emotional maturity. You cannot love someone into taking responsibility for a life they refuse to examine. You can encourage them, support them, forgive them, and communicate with them. But you cannot make the decision for them. Responsibility is not something another person can place inside you. It must rise from personal honesty. It begins when someone becomes willing to stop blaming others, confront their behavior, and admit that their choices are creating consequences. Many compassionate people become trapped because they believe greater love will produce greater accountability. They think perhaps if I become more patient, they will finally understand. Perhaps if I explain myself more clearly, they will recognize the pain they caused. Perhaps if I forgive them one more time, they will appreciate me and change. But love does not automatically transform someone who is committed to avoiding responsibility. You may give more, yet they may demand more. You may explain more, yet they may twist your words. You may forgive more, yet they may repeat the same behavior. You may sacrifice more, yet they may continue acting as though your sacrifice is an obligation rather than a gift. The problem is not always that you failed to love them correctly. The problem may be that they refuse to receive love with humility. Healthy love inspires growth, but unhealthy entitlement uses love as protection from consequences. When a person knows you will rescue them every time, apologize even when you were hurt, and remain regardless of how they behave, they may have little reason to examine themselves. Your constant rescue can unintentionally become a shield that protects them from reality. You must learn that helping someone and carrying someone are not the same thing. Helping says, I will support your effort. Carrying says, I will do the work you refuse to do. Helping says, I believe you can become responsible. Carrying says, I will remain responsible for both of us. Helping strengthens people. Carrying them endlessly may keep them dependent, entitled, and emotionally immature. You were never assigned the responsibility of becoming another adult's conscience. You cannot become their permanent excuse maker, emotional caretaker, or personal repair system. You cannot spend your entire life cleaning up destruction they refuse to stop creating. There comes a moment when love must speak honestly. Love must say, I care about you, but I will not continue participating in this pattern. Love must say, I forgive you, but forgiveness does not mean there are no consequences. Love must say, I want you to grow, but I cannot perform your growth for you. Love must say, I will not continue sacrificing my peace to protect you from the results of your decisions. That is not cruelty. That is mature love. Immature love fears every uncomfortable reaction. Mature love understands that temporary discomfort may be necessary for long-term growth. Immature love believes that saying no is rejection. Mature love understands that boundaries can be an act of truth. Immature love protects people from every consequence. Mature love allows people to learn from the consequences of their own choices. You may fear that setting limits will cause the person to become angry, distant, or accusatory. They may call you selfish. They may say you have changed. They may claim that you no longer care. But ask yourself this: if someone only believes you love them when you are abandoning yourself, is that love or control? If your care is only accepted when it comes without standards, then your kindness is not being respected. It is being consumed. You must stop measuring love by how much pain you can tolerate. Love is not proven by endless suffering. Loyalty is not proven by accepting repeated disrespect. Compassion is not proven by allowing another person to escape accountability. Your value is not determined by how long you can remain inside an unhealthy cycle. The strongest form of love may be allowing reality to speak. It may mean refusing to make excuses. It may mean stepping back. It may mean ending the conversation when disrespect begins. It may mean allowing someone to face the outcome of their behavior without rushing in to save them. This does not guarantee that they will change. That truth must be accepted. They may continue denying responsibility. They may blame you. They may search for someone else who will tolerate the behavior. They may create a story in which they are always the victim. You cannot control that. Your responsibility is not to force their awakening. Your responsibility is to protect your own integrity. You can offer truth, but you cannot force honesty. You can offer support, but you cannot force effort. You can offer forgiveness, but you cannot force transformation. You can offer love, but you cannot force responsibility. At some point, you must release the belief that your goodness can do another person's inner work. Their healing is their assignment. Their accountability is their assignment. Their character is their assignment. Your assignment is to remain compassionate without becoming powerless, loving without becoming lost, and supportive without becoming responsible for what another person refuses to change. Stop trying to save someone by sacrificing yourself. Real love does not require your disappearance. Real love makes room for truth, dignity, responsibility, and mutual respect. You may care deeply about someone and still refuse to carry the burden they were meant to confront themselves. Self-respect is not cruelty. It is the recognition that your life, your time, your peace, and your emotional well-being have value. Many kind people struggle with this truth because they have been taught that saying no is rude, creating distance is selfish, and protecting themselves means they have stopped caring. But that is not true. You can care deeply about someone and still refuse to be mistreated by them. You can understand their pain and still hold them accountable for their behavior. You can forgive them and still decide that they no longer deserve the same level of access to your life. When you have spent a long time pleasing others, setting a boundary can feel unnatural. The first time you say, "I will not continue this conversation if you insult me," you may feel guilty. The first time you stop answering manipulative messages, you may question yourself. The first time you refuse to explain your decision repeatedly, you may wonder whether you are being too harsh. But guilt is not always proof that you are doing something wrong. Sometimes guilt is simply the discomfort of doing something new. You must learn to separate guilt from responsibility. You are responsible for speaking respectfully. You are responsible for acting honestly. You are responsible for avoiding unnecessary cruelty. But you are not responsible for making another person comfortable with every decision you make. You are not responsible for preventing someone from feeling disappointed when you choose to protect yourself. You are not responsible for carrying the emotional consequences of their behavior. A person who has benefited from your lack of boundaries may call your self-respect selfishness. They may say you have changed. They may accuse you of becoming cold, distant, or difficult. But ask yourself an important question. Did you become difficult? Or did you simply become harder to control? Did you become cruel? Or did you stop tolerating cruelty? Did you stop caring? Or did you finally begin caring about yourself too? Self-respect does not require shouting, revenge, or humiliation. It does not require you to insult someone or expose them publicly. Real self-respect is calm. It is clear. It does not beg to be understood. It does not argue endlessly. It simply says, "This behavior is not acceptable to me, and I will no longer participate in it." That statement is not an attack. It is a decision. You cannot control whether someone lies, blames, manipulates, or creates conflict. But you can control whether you remain available for that pattern. You can end the conversation. You can reduce contact. You can refuse to defend yourself against every accusation. You can seek professional support. You can choose environments where your dignity is respected. This is especially important when dealing with someone who repeatedly displays narcissistic behavior. They may view your compassion as something they are entitled to receive. They may expect forgiveness without accountability. They may want access to you without respecting your limits. When you begin to change the pattern, they may react strongly because the old system no longer benefits them. Do not allow their reaction to become the judge of your boundary. A healthy boundary is not measured by whether the other person likes it. It is measured by whether it protects your values, your safety, and your well-being. A person may dislike your boundary and still be required to respect it. Their anger does not automatically make your decision wrong. Their disappointment does not mean you have failed. Self-respect also means refusing to abandon yourself in order to keep a relationship. If maintaining peace requires you to silence your feelings, ignore your needs, accept repeated disrespect, and constantly apologize, then you are not maintaining peace. You are maintaining an unhealthy pattern. Peace built on your silence is not real peace. A healthy relationship makes room for honesty. It allows both people to speak. It allows disagreement without punishment. It allows boundaries without retaliation. It allows mistakes to be acknowledged and repaired. When only one person's emotions matter, the relationship becomes unbalanced. You must also understand that self-respect is not pride. Pride says, "I am better than you." Self-respect says, "I have value too." Pride refuses to listen. Self-respect listens, but still makes wise decisions. Pride seeks control. Self-respect protects dignity. You do not need to hate someone to create distance. You do not need to prove that they are evil before you protect yourself. You do not need a perfect explanation. Sometimes the repeated pattern is enough. Sometimes the emotional exhaustion is enough. Sometimes the absence of accountability is enough. Your life is not a courtroom where you must present endless evidence before you are allowed to choose peace. Stand firmly in the truth that your well-being matters. Stop apologizing for refusing disrespect. Stop believing that endurance is always strength. Sometimes strength means staying, communicating, and working through difficulty. But sometimes strength means accepting that you cannot repair a relationship alone. You are allowed to choose relationships where kindness is mutual. You are allowed to expect respect. You are allowed to stop giving unlimited chances to people who repeatedly waste them. You are allowed to protect your heart without hardening it. Do not become cruel. Become clear. Do not become bitter. Become wise. Do not stop loving. Stop abandoning yourself in the name of love. Self-respect is not the rejection of another person. It is the decision to stop rejecting yourself.